Everybody. I'm Colleen Ryan. I'm the Consulting Executive Director for the New York State CDFI Coalition. We are really glad that you could join our webinar today and learn how businesses and organizations are working together to help deliver transportation equity in our cities. Some of you are CDFI executives, but I have seen registrants from across the country and in fact all over the world. So here's an elevator soundbite of what New York State Community Development Financial Institutions, or CDFIs, do. We provide financial services and education for low-income New Yorkers. We leverage federal and private dollars for economic development. We create market-based solutions that provide capital to chronically underserved communities across the state. And we promote responsible alternatives to predatory loans. Since 1995, the New York State CDFI Coalition has been the organizer and catalyst for strategic initiatives that help CDFIs and the communities they serve. The coalition provides a collective voice, allowing our members to stay locally focused while delivering impact associated with increased scale. That's why we thought it was so important to use our platform today to promote this an innovative collaboration. So, what would an equitable commute look like in your community? Is there reliable public transportation? Are some of your neighborhoods transportation deserts? Are major employers accessible without a car? Before we get started with the panel, it's my pleasure to ask my friend and neighbor, Leah Golby, President of the New York State Bicycling Coalition, to welcome you all here today. Leah?
Hi, thank you so much, Colleen, and thanks for inviting me to do this intro from New York Bicycling Coalition. We often call ourselves NYBC for short, and I did put our website into the chat if anybody wants to check us out. I currently live in Albany. I'm originally from New York City. I came here to go to college decades ago, and I kind of stayed. And so I say this because when I originally came up to Albany, and it was decades ago, I was like, okay, where's the subway? How do I? There is no subway, right? And back then, our public bus system was just horrendous. I did use a bike a little bit in college, but not much because I didn't feel particularly safe. But over the years, I have become a transportation equity advocate because several years ago I decided to not drive frequently, and so I really realized how difficult it was to get around our region without using a car every day. Some spots, like within the densely populated part of the city, is very easy to walk and bike, and with the right skills, you can safely get around. But venturing out to some areas, it becomes a lot more difficult. Our transportation authority is doing a great job, however, at working on all of this. So the New York Bicycling Coalition, our mission is basically, in short, to support people who bicycle for every reason possible. So that includes commuters, and we actually worked really hard on legalizing e-bikes in New York State because a few years ago they were not legal. So we were really happy when a couple of years ago e-bikes did become legal after a lot of work from coalition partners. And the current law, so right now, actually, we are working on a video that we will be releasing soon.
Provides information because the e-bike law as it currently is a bit confusing. We're hoping that within a couple years, we'll be able to make some tweaks to it to make it more intuitive for users. But e-bikes in general, I think, are a real game changer for mobility in New York State. When we were first getting involved with the push for e-bikes, I honestly didn't see it as an equity issue because I was like, these are really expensive machines. It's a luxury item, like who cares? But then I started talking to people who work in the transportation planning space, and they were like, no, this is going to change the way that particularly bike share can work and really help people get to where they need to go, and really can become part of the greater transportation system. And I have completely bought into that. And when I started reading about the Equitable Commute Project, I was really excited to see that people who don't have disposable income are being able to get e-bikes to help them get to opportunities and work. So really excited to be part of this. And I am sorry that I'm going to have to leave shortly because I do have to get back to my day job. But I'm psyched I'll be able to watch this later. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Leah, for joining us and for that great welcome. And actually, I think she's covered everything. So goodbye, everybody. Thanks again, Leah. Before we get started, I do want to invite everyone to share questions either in the chat feature or in the Q&A, and I'll get to as many as I can after the presentations. Let me get started by introducing our panelists. Marianna Koval is the Director of Invest NYC SDG, the Center for Sustainable Business at the NYU Stern School of Business. She'll give us some background on the Equitable Commute Project, or ECP. Melanie Stern is a New York State CDFI Coalition board member and Director of Consumer Lending for Spring Bank. She'll talk about the role the bank is playing as the funding partner of ECP with e-bike Loan NYC. They'll be joined by Jared Rodriguez, Principal of Emergent Urban Concepts, a planner based in the Hudson Valley, and Solomon Smart, Program Director of BronxWorks, for a roundtable discussion on how to provide greater access to micromobility and address fundamental injustices in transportation. Let's get started with Marianna.
Thanks so much, Colleen. I'm delighted to join the panel and provide a little bit of background. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I have a short presentation and I'll try to keep it as informal as possible. Let me just do this. But just to give you a little bit of background, I run an initiative called Invest NYC SDG, and we're a multi-year initiative that was launched at the Center for Sustainable Business at NYU Stern, the business school. And our purpose has been to help engage the private sector and develop projects that would advance New York City's sustainability goals using the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a framework. That's a big idea. We've worked across 6 different areas. This falls into the sustainable mobility bucket. And this is my favorite of all my children, of all the projects that we've worked on over the last 3 years. It came about really pure happenstance. Telephone calls in July of 2020, that dreadful summer. We were in the midst of the pandemic. George Floyd had just been murdered. And it was very hard to pay attention to anyone's job unless it was about New York City's recovery, both physical and economic, from the pandemic. And also, if it didn't include issues and answers to achieving racial equity, it was just hard to think about anything else. So from that, I met an extraordinary woman, Melinda Hanson. I'm looking at Melanie Stern, Melinda Hanson. And she and I began kicking around this idea of how to launch a sustainable mobility project that would speak to both of those challenges. And this is what we launched. So stick with me, but here is the proposal. We want to move New York City and, of course, New York State and other cities and states throughout the nation and the world forward. We developed what we call now the Equitable Commute Project. And our goal is to provide low-cost loans and subsidies for the purchase of 5,000 e-bikes for lower-income frontline workers. And we're talking about bike ownership, e-bike ownership, and not bike shares. So we can measure the metrics, and we will continue to do that to show the enormous impact that this project, this pilot project, could have. The team, we've put together just an amazing team of people, and we meet every Wednesday, and increasingly we're finding 16 and 18 people every single week. It includes NYU Stern, but Electric Avenue, which is Melinda's consulting firm, the HOPE program, because we've partnered with HOPE in order to develop a green workforce training program for the whole micromobility industry that is sweeping New York, sweeping the United States, and clearly has swept Europe already. Barreto-based strategies and Paul Lipson, a critical political strategist. Empire Clean Cities, it's helping us with research and replication. And for this purpose, Springbank, our financing partner that has been so creative in thinking about how we bring ownership access to people who need it most, not for an expensive recreation vehicle, but really for a powerful option as a way of getting to work. So we began in the midst of the pandemic and realized what COVID did was really spotlight what was already an existing transportation crisis. And we saw this huge opportunity to provide an option to people, because the only people left on the subways during the pandemic were people who had no choice. They weren't working remotely. They were on the front lines and helping all of us. So we began to do the background studies and understood quickly that there are 1 million frontline workers in New York, and nearly 250,000 are lower income, and that many people live in transportation deserts. The lower the income, the longer and more difficult their commute is. And those long commutes limit everyone's economic opportunities and keeps people in long-term poverty. So we also recognized that as much as everyone raced out to secure a driving license, that cars are not the answer in New York City or any of our cities. Streets are completely gridlocked, and they create the cars very large sources of greenhouse gas emissions. So the more we talked about it, I had always thought about micromobility and e-bikes as something for those plaid-shirted guys in their mid-20s who run me down on the Brooklyn Bridge. It was those boys out there, and it was just a way that they could go as fast as they wanted. But as I became educated, I realized that this is really an amazing solution to this problem, that as a 64-year-old lady that's not in always the best shape, that it really is accessible to people of all ages and fitness levels. I've now been riding e-bikes, and it is amazing. You can make it everywhere you still get exercise, but it's not the effort that you would anticipate. It's 30 times cheaper to buy and store versus maintaining and purchasing a used car. And obviously, it's a much more sustainable answer. So we then recognized that micromobility is really unaffordable for many, many New Yorkers. If electric mobility, micromobility vehicles are $500 for an e-scooter, or on average $1,000, $1,200 for an e-bike, that's a really big expense. We also knew from really early outreach that there were many, many people who were interested. Demand was clear. So that's important for everybody in this audience. There's a lot of demand. And so we had to stop our outreach because there were so many people who were interested, and we didn't want to overpromise. This is just a picture. Now you look at the masks and you think, well, oh, are we past this crisis? But here were just some of the people who were really interested in an e-bike and who shared with us what their commutes were and the number of links they had to make in order to travel, sometimes only 10 miles, and what difference that e-bike made in their commute. So we developed this proposal. We want to provide micromobility ownership to 5,000 frontline workers by providing 50% subsidy toward the purchase of those e-bikes, and then also creating access to low-cost financing through a critical CDFI, Springbank, based in the Bronx. But we hope that we'll inspire other CDFIs in New York State to think about how they might be able to provide similar low-cost programs. But Melanie will talk all about that to you. Okay, now I'm not advancing. And so these are the pieces: accessible finance, rider training, maintenance and repairs, and secure parking. So we've partnered across the board here so that we're touching on the need for that accessible financing through Springbank, rider training with Brown Bike Girl, and maintenance and repairs, building that skilled workforce, and then working with local business people in New York, like Uni and Shabazz, who has provided a system for secure modular parking solutions. Whoop. My apologies. And the long-term goal, of course, is that once you get 5,000 people out on the streets, those people become that core constituency. We begin to see changes in the legislation that will provide subsidies at a federal and state level, similar to EV subsidies. So all those people who've gotten the great tax breaks for their electric vehicle, they should also be entitled, other people should be entitled to an incentive for the purchase of an e-bike. And that legislation is being created all over the United States, including in our New York State legislature. And we also think with 5,000 people on the street, we're going to see a larger organized constituency that insists on the important safety bike infrastructure. And I have to show the kind of global map and just say these subsidies and support for micromobility are taking place all over the world. And COVID really did drive this. At the same time, we're measuring success, maximizing impact. We've partnered with the Rudin Center and C2 Smart Cities, the first at the Wagner School at NYU and the second at Tandon. And we're going to be collecting all of the critical data so that we know that we can scale and replicate this project as we move forward. We did our first distribution event in December. It was extremely successful. We had discounted e-bikes provided by Van Moof, The Hub, Zumo, Rad Power, and Ride Panda. And they are the pilot of the pilot. Springbank was there and financed these bikes, and we're very excited about it. The big news is that we all work together to prepare a proposal and compete in a New York Clean Transportation Prize program that's being hosted by NYSERDA. We learned at the beginning of January of this year that our proposal for sustainable mobility, the Equitable Commute Project, has put us in a category of the final 5 finalists, 3 of which will receive $7 million. So that $7 million is intended to go to provide both the support from all of the partner organizations and, most importantly, the subsidy for the purchase of 5,000 e-bikes. Here, we've kind of outlined the timeline and next steps, and we are very excited to begin to see citywide rollout beginning, we hope, the 4th quarter of 2022, if not the 1st quarter of 2023. So this is a great picture at the HOPE program offices in December as we launched the first distribution event. And with that photo, I'm going to stop sharing and turn over the screen to my colleague, Melanie Stern, who can talk more about the finance program that she developed with Springbank. So take it from here, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Marianna. And Melanie, we're going to ask you to unmute and share your screen.
Thanks, Marianna. I know Leah is gone, but wow, I thought she sort of, as you said, did our job for us. Can you see my screen?
Coming up.
Great. Okay, so we are not at Springbank transportation experts, but what we do know and have done a pretty good job at is developing small dollar loan products for a low and moderate income folk in New York City, but actually we've also been lending in Westchester and areas further north. So we have a well built out program and platform. And when the folks from the Equitable Commute Project came to us and said, you know, we think that, you know, we're going to subsidize these bikes, but there are going to be people who still can't afford the balance of the price for an e-bike. And as Marianna said, they can run from $500, $1,200. We see bikes, you know, that go up to $2,000 and $3,000. And we were like really keen immediately to create a loan product that would work for this program. And I'll tell you all very frankly, and I know a lot of you, it was not a huge lift. It wasn't no work, but we already have a really successful employee loan program. We've been partnering with employers around New York and Westchester County for a couple of years and offering a small dollar loan going up to $3,500 for employees using with no credit score minimum requirement. And we do this, and the program is successful because of the partnership with employers. So when ECP said, hey, you know, what we're trying to do is provide bikes to frontline essential workers, and we're going to access these folks through employers, it was just a perfect fit. It was also really important for us as a CDFI and a B Corp to participate. This kind of lending and green lending in particular are really core to our mission and to the B Corp movement in general. So it ticked off so many boxes for us in terms of providing credit and providing it in a way that was fair and transparent, and also doing lending in the green space. So it was sort of a win-win for us. So we were able to work over a couple of months to put up the product. And I don't know of if any of my CDFI credit union or bank colleagues are on the call, but we are more than happy to share the program, the process, the underwriting, all the pieces that went into preparing this product. A really key element for being able to do this New York City wide and in other parts of the state for us is a platform that we built with a company called Happy Mango several years ago, which means that folks can access the loan, apply online to their closing remotely. So it allows us to expand our reach for this program across the city. So this is a look at what the loan product is all about. It's, as I said, it's a product that accessible online. We're doing loans up to $2,500. We have no credit score minimum requirement. The whole process is done online. And we turn these loans over fairly quickly. A really critical component for this program is a partnership we're developing with bike shops around the city. So that folks can apply, pick out a bike from reputable bike shops. They pick out the bike, the vendor sends us the invoice, we're going to pay the vendors, and folks will be riding. They'll be moving. And we set it up that way because this is a mission-based program for us. We want to make sure that the loans are going for the purpose intended. We have our regular employee loan, which we call the opportunity loan that we've had for several years. So if employees need a loan for a different purpose, they can apply for our opportunity loan. So this is a very, very targeted loan product for a targeted population. So this product is already online. And we are working both with our 30 plus existing employers to let their employees know that this product is available. But very importantly, we're also taking this product to new employers. So hospitals, for instance, we have not had hospitals in our current program. We sometimes call this product our little Trojan horse for getting in the door. We want to get hospital workers on e-bikes. The commute in the Bronx, east-west, is, as people have alluded to, virtually, it's impossible. It's I grew up in the Bronx. It's always been a difficult commute. It only got worse during the pandemic. So we have situated this product in our employee loan program, which means that folks can apply for the e-bike loan. They can access our other loan product, and they also can access free financial counseling from our partnership with GreenPath. So it's a sort of a comprehensive workforce program. And as I said, we are more than happy. We'd be thrilled if other people So took advantage of the product. This is the other loan we offer as part of this program. This is the opportunity loan. And I wanted to give you sort of a quick look at the screenshots. Instead, we've made this program and process really simple. People apply online, they hit the electric bike, they'll see a drop down with who's participating. We have added all our partner bike shops and we'll continue to add them right on the platform so folks can link through to these e-bike providers. All of the shops that we're partnering with are either offering a discount and free maintenance or at least free maintenance. They all have locations in New York, which is critical, which means that somebody can not only purchase their bike, but they can get its service locally. So our goal is to partner employers with local bike shops so that we're supporting local businesses at the same time we're providing access to a loan. If folks get a subsidized bike, don't need a loan, that's all to the good. If they get a subsidized bike and can't afford the balance, we're there to do the loan for them. If they're a participating employer and they want to sort of support bike riding as a benefit for their employees, this is a great way to do it. So another look at the drop down and how the program works. The application takes 5 to 10 minutes. It's really simple. We have virtually no stoppers for this program since we don't use a credit score. We do require that people be employed for 1 year at the partner employer, and they're earning a minimum of $20,000. That's our sort of baseline affordability criterion. So pretty much, I would say 95% of employees that apply are approved. Two other key components to this program. One, which is why it's these are critical for the bank in terms of being able to sustain this program and for the purposes of scaling. The payments on the loan come to us as a direct deposit via payroll. So what that means is we open a savings account for every borrower. Now they can divide their deposit or they can put their entire paycheck into their Spring Bank account. We don't require it, but at least the payment amount goes into a Spring Bank savings account. We take the payment out of there. What that means is that if people remain employed, we're going to get paid. And we're going to report those payments to the credit bureau. So a lot of people say a nice creation of a good basic credit score or an improvement to their credit score. So there are all these great ancillary benefits, including, as I said, access to unlimited free financial counseling from our partner GreenPath. So last piece is just recently, this was sort of a no-brainer. I don't know why we didn't do this a while ago, but we just added to the platform, the loan platform, a checkoff box for people to add an amount to every loan payment that just sits in the savings account. I mean, we're opening the savings account anyway, so they can click the box at the front end and say, hey, if I'm approved, I'd like to add this amount to my savings account. At closing, they have to make that final commitment. We put this up 2 weeks ago. Virtually everybody who's applied for the loan in the last 2 weeks has opted in. So very excited. We're going to track that over the next couple of weeks. So now you can get your bike, you can build savings. I mean, it's all great. So anyway, so repeating that, we're happy to get other financial institutions, CDFIs on board with this product. I don't think you have to be a bank or credit union to do it. Yeah, so I think it's an opportunity for CDFIs around the state to provide this kind of financing. And we are more than glad to share what we've done and how we've done it.
That's great. Thanks so much, Melanie. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen, and then we're going to bring the fellas in. And I hope Solomon is listening and can come back onto the screen now, because I'd like to start with him, actually.
Sure thing.
Okay, Solomon. So Melanie told me that you were one of the first recipients of one of these e-bikes. Could you tell me about your commute prior to, or not your commute so much, but what you did in your work and why the e-bike, or how the e-bike has changed what you do every day.
Well, I run a recreational senior center, and it's not too far from where I live. However, it is a 45-minute bus ride. But on the bike, it's literally, well, on a regular bike, it's about 10, 15 minutes. On the e-bike, it's 7 minutes. And it's a complete game changer for me. There's a hill that is right before, well, yeah, we're on a hill. We're near the Grand Concourse. And so there's coming up both ways, it's a hill. And I call it the demoralizer because once you get to the top, it lets you know who's the boss. And literally there's a complete difference in my demeanor as I walk through the door. If I'm on the e-bike, I'm in a great mood. If I'm not, I'm tired. I'm like, give me 5 minutes. Don't talk to me yet. And so it's just a complete game changer. Oh, I don't hear you.
That's okay. I realized I was muted. Jared, do you want to join in and let us know what your take is on micromobility and why you're joining us today?
Sure, absolutely. So I also participate as the proxy citizens rep in the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, which is the regional metropolitan planning organization for the northern half of New Jersey, and it has clear links into the New York metropolitan area. The sister organization is the New York Metropolitan Transit Council, or NYMTC. And so that's the organization that controls, the multi-county region on the New York side. And then there's a similar organization for Connecticut, right? So our metro region is like very large, over 20 million people, multi-state, with New York City at the center. And I think, and then just, one additional thing, I'm being considered to sit on the Taconic Region State Park Commission as a commissioner. And so one of the trends that I keep hearing about is that while we are an extremely well-connected region for American standards, we have a lot of serious gaps, and they're regional, right? They're local, they're on a neighborhood basis. And then they're between systems, right? So whether it's bus, commuter rail, local, subway, street networks, trail networks, and then obviously safe bike infrastructure, we've got some extremely serious gaps, right? And there's a lot of different organizations that are focusing on these gaps and trying to fill them. And so I'm fascinated by how micromobility, e-bikes in particular, are sort of like a quantum leap to fill the gap. Like, we weren't really expecting it so much. I mean, there's like a technology change that occurred, and it is widely available, inexpensive lithium-ion batteries that they were able to integrate into, existing scooters and even skateboards and bicycles, right? That's the transition that we've seen, and that transition was driven by cell phone adoption. I mean, the only reason why we have EVs, even EV vehicles today in the way that we do, and that they're relatively affordable, is because we drove the price of lithium battery cells into the ground, because now everyone has a mobile device. And so with the adoption of additional EV vehicles, right, like automobiles, energy storage, right, for renewable energy, and more widely adopted micromobility devices, we're going to see the cost of that, I think, continue to decline, and we'll be able to more effectively fill these major gaps. But finance is extremely important, in my opinion. Access to the bikes themselves, right, or the vehicles themselves. Education, right, and outreach is hugely important. But I can't stress enough how important infrastructure is, and making our streets safe for bikes, because we can be giving them out for free, right? And if people don't feel comfortable, traversing the streets, we have that problem. And so what I'd love to see, and I know that we're seeing the beginnings of this, right? Because we're just having the whole congestion pricing conversation, right? I would love to see space that is dedicated to vehicles be turned over to pedestrians and e-bikes. Like we must see that happen if we're going to transform our region, right? And it's the entire region that needs to be transformed if we're going to meet our climate goals and equity goals, right?
Well,
and
one
economic
could
goals.
argue it's the entire country and the entire world. You
We
know,
can't. Yeah, I mean,
I
I'm sure there are others that feel this way too. Like I have global aspirations, right? Like I want to see the world be a better place, but you know, we need to lead here. We've got the conditions available to us where we can lead as a region, and I think we have to show people that this can work before they're willing to adopt it. And that's what New York does, right?
Well, along those lines, that's what I really want to try to do, is to come back from the 30,000-foot academic level and come back to the on the street level. And, you know, I see Solomon nodding, and I know that Melanie showed some of the slides, or I can't remember whether it was Marianna or Melanie, who was showing slides of other people at BronxWorks who had gotten some of these e-bikes. So in addition to Solomon with your commute, I know there was one person at BronxWorks who worked at the different kitchens that you served. Could you tell that story, Solomon?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember his name, but he basically manages several kitchens, and oftentimes he has to commute between the different locations. They're in some of our shelters, family shelters, and he has to bring products, ingredients. And so he was able to actually get a cargo bike, and it's a real benefit for him. I mean, it cuts down his between office commute from 30 to 45 minutes to literally 10 minutes or less. And that is a complete game changer. It saves him most of his day from being consumed by going between sites, which is just necessary for him. And even myself, sometimes I'll have to go between different offices. And again, a complete game changer. We're talking from 45 minutes down to 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
That's a real productivity
We
boost.
have, I'll just tell you one other quick anecdote from that first event, and the first distribution event, where the ECP group was able to get subsidized bikes. We made loans. We sort of pushed through this program really soft launch to maybe half of the people who got bikes. And one of them, and I know she won't mind me using her name, Pamela Martinez, she works for a nonprofit called the Hunts Point Children Alliance, or Alliance for Children at Hunts Point. She has been commuting on a bike with her 2 kids for years, and dropping them at daycare and at school. So she got this bike that has a 2-seater in the back, canopy over the kids, and she's in love with this bike. She's so happy, you know. Before, how she was managing to pedal those kids for the last couple of years is beyond me, but this is just, she's just happy to, and she feels, you know, safety is obviously a critical issue, as Jared suggested, and the Hunts Point is not the easiest place to maneuver, but she's been, her husband commutes to his job on a bike as well.
I just wanted to add in response to Jared raising the kind of safety issue and the importance of changed infrastructure. You know, we thought long and hard about this, and we continue to keep thinking about this. And it isn't too simplistic, but it is, if you bike, they will build it. And it's really the need to build a critical constituency. And there hasn't been a constituency. There has been a constituency. Transportation Alternatives has been an extraordinary advocate for bike and bike infrastructure. The exciting thing about e-bikes is that it expands that constituency to all kinds of different people of, as I said, all ages and fitness levels, people who would never before have considered riding a bike to work. And so I think that that's going to make a very critical difference in the kind of political will to ensure that that biking infrastructure is in place. And we are growing our bike use by 5% every year. It's going to become increasingly more explosive, I think, as we move forward.
I think that's such a huge point, right? As the demographics that are represented inside this constituency expand, the political voice grows, I think, dramatically. And the assisted bike, right, or the e-bike, the full e-bike, you were mentioning whether or not more elderly people could access the technology and use bike infrastructure. That's critical.
I resemble that remark.
I mean, if we think about the representation that elderly people have in politics, okay, they are generally overrepresented because they're more engaged. I see that on a regional level. They're generally more engaged. Younger people are less engaged. And so if we are able to expand the constituency to that group of folks, we will see political change. And that's pretty exciting.
Let's not say elderly, let's say older, because I know that AARP
as probably the oldest person on this screen. I appreciate that.
But look at the leadership role that like AARP has taken in Complete Streets, and guess what? I've already got my AARP card, so it's 50 plus. So, let's look at that as that constituency level. I had gotten a question before we even started this program when I put this on my Facebook page. So I'm starting to get questions. So let me start peppering our conversation with that. We talked about linkages and partnerships between, you've got your regional transit groups, you've got your local, like in Albany, it's the Capital District Transportation Authority. They run the buses. Do e-bikes fit on those bike racks on the fronts of buses? Can you like take an e-bike part of the way and then put it on the front of a bus? Are those linkages there? Jared's shaking his head.
In certain systems, so B-Line in Westchester, or the Tappan Zee Express bus that crosses the bridge right between Rockland and Westchester County. Like, we do see regional systems that have bike racks on the front of the bus, but it is not, I don't know that it is on every single bus, which is a huge problem.
Yeah,
right?
and are they universally, like, would an e-bike fit on one of the standard bus racks, or do you have to have like a special?
Generally, no, generally they would. The difficulty is sometimes, though, there's the weight, right? And being able to lift it up onto the rack. So we have to come up with better solutions for that. And then in my mind, one of the big gaps is some of the cycling regulations in our regional rail system, like commuter rail, NJ Transit, right? There are sometimes limitations, though I think that they've been relaxed during COVID because we've got less dense ridership. But when ridership returns, we have a problem. So we have to start thinking creatively about that as well.
Gotcha. One of the questions that I had by email was, what made you decide to include this workforce development component? Is there a shortage, a scarcity of people who can repair e-bikes?
Yes, and I know Melanie can speak to this also, but this was a key component of the overall structure of the program, because there is not yet the workforce that's been trained in e-bike maintenance, battery systems, and we've watched the number of jobs in micromobility grow in Western Europe. And this is an ideal workforce training area. And so the HOPE program quickly joined as our green workforce training partner in this overall initiative. And it's going to be essential to ensure that the bike shops that Melanie and Springbank have partnered with have the staff, the trained staff, to begin to handle the maintenance and repair of 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 e-bikes over the next handful of years.
And I can just jump in and say that the bike I got is a Van Moof. That's a Dutch company, and they have particular brand stores. The only brand store they have in New York is in Brooklyn, and I live in the Bronx. And so, and I don't trust my bike in the hands of a regular bike shop because, that there you go.
That makes a lot of sense. It really does.
To the point about freight earlier, right? If we think about freight, right, like large semi trucks that can carry lots of freight, if we think about right sizing freight for urban environments. I mean, e-bike mobility, e-bike freight is absolutely ideal. And when you bring the size of that freight module down to something at the scale of an e-bike, it means that there's more workforce development opportunity, right, to be shared with more people, producing that kind of mobility for freight. And we have to be doing that because we are just absolutely slammed from a freight perspective. So I think it's a huge workforce opportunity.
One of the other things that came up on a planning call for this event was the distinction between bike shares and bike ownership. So we are not talking about, in this program, we're not talking about a bike share situation where, you're delivering food throughout the day and, you park the bike in the restaurant, floor and, pick it up the next morning to start your delivery route again. This is building abilities for people to own their own transportation, right? Could someone speak to that a little bit?
I mean, as a bike user, as a biker for over 20 years, I prefer to own my own bike. I know where it is. I know it's going to be reliable. I know when it needs to be repaired. It'll be ready when I need it. And as someone who lives in the Bronx, city bike is not a practical option for me. The stations are not located near where I need to be to commute. I'd still have to take a bus just to get there. I haven't done the calculations or the math. I don't know how it works out financially, but I think just for me, it's just more practical to own my bike.
Excellent.
And that's how, go ahead, Melanie.
No. Yes, the answer is to Colleen's question is for the purposes of this program and the UCP strategy and what we're doing with the loan. This is about ownership, not that there isn't a role for, rentals, or, there are lots of other options out there, but the cost of, just talking from the perspective of if somebody needs to borrow, the cost of the loan we're doing, which is a 10% for $1,000 is $80 in interest over the life of the loan. So it makes ownership doable as an option. So.
Melanie, while we're talking about the financial side, I did have a question previously. What metric, and this is again from the CDFI world, where we're coming from. What did you use other than, direct deposit? What were the criteria that you can use if you weren't using credit scores, for financing? Could you walk through that again? How you set this loan application up?
Yeah, it's employment. We use employment as the substitute for credit score. We've been doing it for a couple of years. It works really well. There was a great article in a magazine a couple of years back about our partnership with one of the employers, and the headline, I wish I had thought of it myself. It was, what if your employment could be your credit score? I thought, wow, that's exactly what we're trying to get at. So as I said, as long as people stay at the job, we're going to get repaid. These are small loans. This is, we need to build scale to make it a profitable line of business for the bank. We're going to stay in it regardless. I'm tired of being the person at the bank who doesn't make money. So we're going to have to build a certain amount of scale, and we'd like this. We want it to be profitable for the bank. We also want it to be profitable so others jump into this market of small dollar lending. So if we want to make the case to other CDFIs around the country, we really want to build scale. But that's really the baseline. So we don't use a credit score. If somebody leaves their job or gets laid off, we do ask people at the front end for a alternative bank account. It's a requirement so that folks know that if they leave automatically, we're going to be pulling payments from a backup account. That works in most cases, not all. But our losses in this program for this type of lending are really, really good. Small dollar lending can be complicated, but we've also been really fortunate in getting several grants from the Federal CDFI Fund and pretty recently from Empire State Development Corp in support of this program. So it allows us to be to take some additional risk. So that's been very useful, but yeah, you're employed and pretty much you're going to get the loan.
When when you talked about kind of mitigating risk and scaling and what you need to make that happen, what would it mean to this project, to this pilot, if you were awarded this NYSERDA Electric Mobility Challenge grant? How would you use that?
Well, we'll use that to create the subsidies for 5,000 e-bikes, and to support outreach, to support the Green Workforce Training Program, the development and implementation, the safety instruction and implementation of safety instruction, the partnerships that we need to create with the private sector. We'll work to continue to expand. I think what is the most innovative part of this project, the financing, the low-cost financing for people without a credit score who are employed. And that's really the key innovation here that I think we can continue to grow and build. And it also will support the data collection, but both subjective and objective, so that we can share our learnings and obviously scale and replicate elsewhere in the state and nationally and internationally. I think I've covered those bases. And that's $7 million over 3 years. So it's a way to, I think, jumpstart micromobility in the largest city in the United States, which many people say, oh God, don't start there. But we know we can do it here.
So we are getting close to time. I can't believe it. But one of the things that I really wanted to ask was, for the people who are on this Zoom and for the people who will be watching this video in the future, what components should local leaders be looking at to replicate your model in other communities? You know, one of the goals of this NYSERDA program is to illustrate or demonstrate replicability. So I see Jared nodding his head. Solomon, you know, I'm guessing that there was a lot of enthusiasm for people at BronxWorks. You know, so could you each kind of take a crack at, you know, what you would be looking at either as an employer or as a planner or as a banker or as an academic, you know, to say in your community, if you had this, it's likely that this program would be a success?
I think, yeah, the safe commuting lanes is a very important thing. Me, I've been biking so long, it's automatic, but my mentality is when I go out riding, every driver is out to kill me. And literally it's the truth. I know several people have died. You look all across New York City, you see the white painted bicycles. That's where a biker was killed.
Yeah.
And I've been knocked down 4 times. And I remember each and every one of them. And the bike lanes are always, especially in the Bronx, filled with double parked cars, double parked trucks. And I know plenty of people who would ride if the biking lanes were safer. So that is critical.
Yep.
I would just say, I'm just trying to scroll down what I would think would be sort of the template. And I think it has to begin with motivated advocates, motivated cross-sector advocates. It's knowledge about micromobility, e-bikes, bikes, e-scooters, and a commitment to seeing them in more people's hands and providing them to people who don't otherwise have the financial access. So that's then including your municipal DOT folks. It's the relationships with the bike shops. It's then building interest and demand with employers, employers of people who are on the front line, who are lower income, who have long commutes, difficult commutes, even where there are very good public transportation systems. And then I think the last piece is Melanie's piece. It's the finance, it's the courage and innovation to create a product that makes it accessible to everyone.
So just like everything, it's all about intersectionality, right?
Who wants to be a cliche?
Right? Melanie or Jared, you want to take a whack at this?
I want to just,
yeah, go Jared. Marianna covered me. Thank you.
No, I know. I just want to echo that a lot, right? Like, it's not immediately obvious to everyone that's advocating for something how cross-sectional this is, how it interacts with so many components of even a small local economy. And what I'd like to see, right, is I would like to see these efforts happen more regionally, right? New York City is a juggernaut, right? They lead. We need to see this spread throughout the region, because if our regional mindset is to support this kind of infrastructure, we're going to see major change, right? Like we operate from an economic basis, we operate as a region. And there's such a role for even small municipalities, county level government, and then obviously like the massive network of nonprofits that are out there that are advocating for so many different things. They could be in this space, being vocal about it. I think it's a great opportunity.
Well, Melanie, as you're the one who brought, go ahead, Melanie.
Well, the only thing I would add is we see this a lot, creating.
You got to get closer to your ears, Melanie. There you go.
Creating a product, I'm sorry, took the headphones off. Creating a
Yeah.
product it's really doable. You know, we see this a lot with mega banks. It can't be done. It's risky. I can't, you know, it's just not true, you know. So, and I've been preaching to the choir because there are CDFIs on the call, and they're all about innovation. But if we can make the case to others that this kind of programming and this kind of process is doable, I think that would be a huge win.
Melanie, I have two super quick questions. We have a minute left. So is there an insurance partner involved? Does Springbank require buyers to obtain insurance?
Not at the moment. If there's a phase 2 and we'd like there to be a phase 2 where we would open up this product more broadly to the general public and not necessarily through employers, we would require insurance. That would be the way that we would get to some security around, and collateral would be too complicated. So there are plenty of insurance companies out there. I just take a quick scan. It's not terribly expensive to get insurance. I don't know if Solomon, if you took a look at that.
No, when you say insurance, you mean for the bike itself or for the rider?
No, this would be for the bike itself.
Yeah,
not that I'm not worried about the rider, but
Van Move, I advocate their brand. They have a great program, an anti-theft program that you can buy from them, and I did purchase that insurance from them.
Melanie, you had talked about what if someone leaves their employer, but what's the payback period on the loan?
they're all 12 months.
Okay, so 12 months, 10%.
This
Okay.
particular loan goes up to $2,500. It's 10%, 12 months, no prepayment penalty, fully amortizing.
Great. All right. Well, on that note, since Melanie's the one who brought this to our attention, I really want to thank Melanie as a CDFI Coalition board member.
Yes.
And I want to thank everyone on behalf of the New York State CDFI Coalition, our panelists, the people who joined us online, the people who sent questions. I do hope that we've inspired you to learn how your community can adapt the Equitable Commute Project model to connect more people to reliable, affordable, and sustainable transportation. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Be safe.
Thanks, Colleen. Thank you for
pulling
hosting.
this together.
My pleasure. So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.